The 2022 Formula One season has so far been one of the Silver Arrow's worst in the last decade, and with the Formula One season nearly halfway, Mercedes still don't look like a team capable of challenging either Red Bull or Ferrari. You can argue that all their podium finishes this season haven't been because they necessarily deserved it. Rather, it's been because of Ferrari and Red Bull's reliability issues. But that's not all. Mercedes appear to be in a really big trouble with their car and two British drivers going into the French Grand Prix next week. Why is Mercedes not considered a favourite for the 2022 French Grand Prix? Can they overcome these setbacks and compete with Red Bull and Ferrari at the French Grand Prix? Following Mercedes' impressive performance at the Spielberg circuit, it has been revealed that the German racing team is currently in a dilemma because they spent a third of the additional budget cap increase for the 2022 Formula One season during the Austrian Grand Prix weekend, thereby making the chances of bringing a much more developed W13 to the 2022 French Grand Prix slim. During the qualifying race at the Austrian Grand Prix, seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton was involved in a heavy crash at turn 7 on the first lap of Q3, rendering his chassis completely useless and his rear wing destroyed. His teammate George Russell was also involved in a heavy crash in qualifying during the same Q3 session, which destroyed his rear wing. Damage was also done to both cars' floors and gearboxes, and there were reports that the Silver Arrows were left scrambling for parts due to a spare part shortage caused by the FIA's 2022 cost cap regulation. Mike Elliott, describing the weekend incident, said, "We've done quite a lot of damage to the cars, so we've broken both floors, we've broken both rear wings, and we damaged quite a lot of suspension. On Lewis's car, we also damaged the front wing and done some cosmetic damage to the chassis. So damage that we can repair, but not repair over a weekend. That meant completely rebuilding Lewis's car from scratch, and it meant also trying to build one floor out of two. We had one complete spare we could fit, and we had to get the best out of the two crashed floors to build another." Team boss Toto Wolff also confirmed the damages and said, "On the damage, yes, the car is pretty injured. Both cars are pretty injured. Floors, we have precautionary checks, changes for the gearbox, a rear wing for George, plenty of parts. That has cost cap implications." The budget cap constraint was reported to have been so bad on the German racing team that they had to fit an older rear wing on George Russell's car because they had no spare parts. Describing Mercedes' situation before the Sunday Grand Prix, Mike Elliott explained that the Mercedes engineering team were only able to recreate one new specification rear wings because of the resources at hand, and as such Russell was given an older rear wing with a higher downforce, given that the young British driver had qualified 4th ahead of Hamilton, who finished P8 in the sprint race. "We were compromised on George's rear wing because we only had one complete spare rear wing. That we chose to fit to Lewis's car because he was going to have to come through the field, which meant that George had to fit a rear wing that was probably not the ideal level of downforce. It was a bit too much downforce for that circuit," Elliott said. Elliott further explained that the Mercedes team were lucky not to have suffered a crash at the sprint race, as they would have been forced to miss the Sunday race. Having damaged two cars so badly as we did on Friday, the drivers were now in a position where if we damaged them in the sprint race, we may well be in a position where we couldn't race on Sunday. So all of that has to be factored in, and all of that sort of compromises your weekend. Mercedes were estimated to have spent $700,000 to repair Hamilton's chassis, and an additional $400,000 for the gearbox. And Toto Wolff added that despite the FIA increasing the $140 million budget cap by 3.1%, or around $4.3 million, to help Formula One teams in the current global inflation crisis, Mercedes had already spent a large portion of the added fee within hours of its implementation due to Hamilton and Russell's crashes at the Austria Grand Prix. "We spent a third of the additional gain we got yesterday in one, right after it," Wolff said. He also admitted that they were already over the budget cap prior to the increase. "We are still, the three of us, Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari, very much above it. That means saving costs will be necessary, at least for Mercedes. So the outcome is helpful. Does it solve our problems? No." Furthermore, despite their crash at the Spielberg circuit, Toto Wolff remains pessimistic about Mercedes' chances going forward, given that, while Hamilton and Russell finished the race 3rd and 4th respectively, it was clear that they were lacking pace and were only lucky to secure a podium finish due to Ferrari's Carlos Sainz and Red Bull's Sergio Perez's reliability issues. "We were missing a few temps here and there, I think we've halved the gap in the last few months. We understand better, but we're still third and fourth in the middle of nowhere, Wolff said. Considering the fact that the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull's pace at every track is getting better while Mercedes, who should be a contender, are battling the racing teams in the middle of the pack for pace, Wolff's pessimistic view may be warranted. For instance, earlier in the season, Red Bull's RB18 was faster on the straights and flat out bends than Ferrari's F175, which was superior in slow and medium turns. However, following several upgrades and developments this season, it does seem that Ferrari's F175 is now as quick on the straights as Red Bull's RB18, and it's all thanks to a new low-drag wing debuted by Charles Leclerc at the Canadian Grand Prix. Mattia Binotto, Ferrari's team principal, confirmed their newfound straight-line speed and said that Ferrari has finally closed the gap between the Scuderia and the Red Bull team when he said, "We had a disadvantage compared to the Red Bull, no doubt, in terms of straight-line speed, especially in DRS zones. In terms of power of their DRS compared to ours, we worked a lot on it. So the new rear wing that we introduced first was Charles in Canada. We have had it on both cars since UK. And with that new rear wing, I think we have simply reduced the gap we had in terms of speed. I think they still have got a slight advantage, but it's very little or negligible." However, despite Wolff's pessimism and Ferrari's newfound pace, Red Bull Racing team principal Christian Horner believes that the Silver Arrows will be fast at the French Grand Prix. "We'll expect to be quick in Paul Ricard," Horner said. "They're showing flashes of being there or thereabouts. The last two races have been pretty decent for them, and there's been no sign, I think, of any porpoising at all. So they seem to be slowly bringing themselves back into the game." The British team boss went on to say that he expects Mercedes to be a formidable force at the French Grand Prix. However, his statements may be reasonable given that the Paul Ricard is one of the smoothest circuits, and Mercedes' best performances so far this season have all been on smooth circuits. However, the Paul Ricard circuit is also characterized by a long Mistral straight, and given the Mercedes W13's pace on the long straights in recent races, Wolff's pessimism is warranted, because there is a chance that Mercedes will end up playing catch-up to both Ferrari and Red Bull drivers at the French Grand Prix. In addition, there have been reports that the relationship between both Mercedes drivers is strained, but Wolff has dismissed these reports, stating that while things can get heated behind closed doors, both British drivers have a healthy working relationship. "They're very good. I think they understand that enemy number one is a car that's not performing like it should. We need to get there, but their personalities, their characters, their mindset is very special. Even if it can get heated because the competition is on and we allow it, overarching, that is always going to be the good character. Nothing vicious, nothing underhand. That's what's happening between the two." Nonetheless, despite both drivers' fantastic relationship, the Silver Arrows face a huge dilemma at the next Grand Prix, as they've already spent 1/3 of the additional budget cap increase, and will need to continue taking cost-cutting measures while still developing the W13, which is apparently not yet able to compete with Red Bull and Ferrari. What are your thoughts on Mercedes' issues ahead of the 2022 French Grand Prix? Do you think they'll be able to stay under the budget cap for the rest of the season? Please share your thoughts in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, the next one on your screen is worth watching.